Welcome to Season 4 of the Questions With podcast, hosted by Quest Ventures, the top venture capital fund in Asia. I am your host, April Vano, and join me as we explore the dynamic startup ecosystem and business landscape in the Philippines. As we listen to thought leaders and industry experts, innovators, and entrepreneurs, we'll uncover the stories, insights, and trends across different industries shaping the future of this vibrant Southeast Asian nation. Joining me today is Ana Melissa Nava, a dynamic leader and visionary entrepreneur who is transforming the landscape of global trade for small businesses. As the CEO and co-founder of 1Export, Mel has been instrumental in empowering local enterprises to navigate the complexities of global markets. Their platform has revolutionized the way Philippine SMEs export their products, making international expansion more accessible and efficient. Under her leadership, 1Export has become a critical support system for many local brands, helping them break into new markets and achieve global success. In this episode, we'll explore her journey as an entrepreneur, her experiences and insights on empowering local businesses, and of course, some of the challenges she had overcome to lead 1Export to where it is today. Hello, Mel. Welcome to Questions With podcast. Thank you for joining us. Thank you. I hope you're doing well. And I know I just did a brief introduction and welcome for you, but can you briefly introduce 1Export to our listeners?
Okay, so 1Export is still the name of our company, but we recently rebranded to Zendies. So we call ourselves Zendies by 1Export. We'd like to say that we are the easiest way to sell and send abroad from the Philippines, Indonesia, and Vietnam to the rest of the world. We are basically this one-stop end-to-end platform, basically where 1Export really started. We wanted to be a one-stop end-to-end platform for anything that is related to cross-border, and we wanted to make it easy and affordable for micro, small, and medium enterprises in the region.
That's amazing. I mean, I know your story. I've seen your journey as a startup founder, and it's really exciting how, your vision. Of course, we will dive into the story of the Philippines and 1Export, now Zendies, and also where you are now that's already spreading across Southeast Asia. But before we really dive into that, Mel, I hope we can take a little bit of a backtrack or even background on you as an entrepreneur, your journey, right? So maybe you could share some of your early influences or experiences that actually shaped your career path and, your entrepreneurial spirit.
Okay, so growing up, I think, grade 1, grade 2, my parents didn't really give me allowance, like in monetary allowance. They gave me in the Philippines what you call baon, which is like, packed lunch, right? So I really didn't have money going to school, and that frustrated me because since I didn't have money, I can't buy like the stuff I wanted in the canteen, right? So I started selling like beads that my grandmother gave me. And I was selling them to my classmates at like 1 peso per bead, which is super overpriced at that point.
Wow.
But I just wanted some money because I wanted to buy food that I like, particularly in the canteen, which I didn't have as my baon or my packed lunch. And I think that was kind of like where it really started. I just liked selling stuff. And eventually I took a career in sales. But also before that, in college and in high school, I also liked helping. I volunteered. I used my spare time to volunteer in payatas. I also used, extracurricular activities were about helping in Gawad Kalinga. I would volunteer in on the weekends and every summer to teach less fortunate kids and tutor them for the next school year. So I really, wanted to be able to do something that had an impact, but also something that I knew I was good at, sales, right? So I got a job in sales as my first job was a export sales specialist in a fast-moving consumer goods company in the Philippines. And I thought that, in export sales, the pitch to me was if you help a small business export, or if you help a local Philippine business export, you actually help the economy and the country. So when I heard that from my previous boss, I let go of any possible offers from like banks or tech companies, because it felt like I was giving more impact in doing export sales. And it was through export sales I was able to sell to Asian groceries. I learned how to sell to the mainstream market. So we launched some products in a Dollar Tree store in the United States. And I felt that, I was helping somehow the Philippine economy because I was bringing
Of
a
course.
Filipino product to the mainstream market. And so that was kind of why we built 1Export. We wanted to help a small business, or any business in the Philippines and, the rest of Southeast Asia to really become global. And at the time that we were thinking about 1Export, it was really you know back then people were not export. They can't even serve my local market, or serving my local market is too much. So that was kind of when we launched the idea.
That's great. I mean, of course, it's coming from, I see you as a saleswoman, right? Someone who can sell like a toothpick or something, and like your stories, selling beads to your friends. But I really like what you shared about, the big picture as well, right? You're talking about small businesses and, really the backbone of our economy as a driving force. And, of course, we have a big domestic market, but the world is even bigger. So that's, more opportunities for these small businesses. And of course, you said already, right? Like a little bit of the background of how kind of, the idea was, there for 1Export, but perhaps maybe like what were those key problems, right? Or key challenges that you wanted to address at the early stage of how do you call this? Building 1Export as a platform, and how has that transformed over the years, right? Because I'm sure even the different changes you've had in your services and even your approach and strategy. So what was it like year zero or year one of 1Export, and then now, like what was what was the challenge or the problem that you're really trying to address?
So at least when we were starting, exporting was not a thing. It was not cool. It was people thought it was extremely difficult. So we wanted to change that, right? But we also knew that exporting was an investment generally, right? You needed people. People back then did not understand that it was not one. Exporting was not like putting your products on Shopee and Lazada and you can sell the next day, right? When you sell in a local marketplace, you take a photo, you put the price, you put the description in your local language, and you can sell. And you get sales if you're lucky, and if you boost on social media, you get even more. Exporting was more of an investment, and it was more long term. You had to comply with the country's regulations abroad. So, for example, you had to make sure that people knew those regulations and they invested in packaging or reformulation to be able to enter that market. And normally, if you talk to a small business, they're like, well, this is my winning product. Why am I going to reformulate? Right? And it was a major mindset shift. Again, I would go to trade shows back then and people would just reject us, like, right, like say you talk to 100, we started talking to just 5 because they were willing to try to export. But so that was the first thing we wanted to address was compliance, and that it was a change in mindset. It was, you had to understand that in order to be global, there are certain adjustments and sacrifices that have to be made. We wanted to address compliance because we wanted people to understand that there are no shortcuts, especially in Southeast Asia. And I'm not just speaking for the Philippines in general. There's always a different way to do this, right? I mean, especially in Vietnam, right? Like, there's a there's a thing where people will go around, um, like, if you're crossing the street, people will go around you because in Vietnamese culture, there's always a way. And in the Philippines, it's also, you find ways, right? Like to, in the Philippine culture, it's like maparaan, right? Like you have to find a way to get, and people think that there are so many shortcuts in exporting, but that's not the case,
Resourcefulness,
because
perhaps.
resourcefulness. But people think like, you know people think that, oh, they can get away with it, right? Or you just you can pay like a lobby man to fix all the problems. But in
Facilitate.
in the
Yeah.
United States, for example, or in Canada or in Europe, if you don't follow the rules, you don't get in, right? And
Correct.
they
You can't sell
really
your product.
exactly, right. And that is something that most people don't necessarily understand, right? Because they're so used to a local culture where they can get away with things, get around things, or even just, it's not long term. I get the other thing I wanted to address at that point was that, obviously, for example, for the Philippines, right, and Vietnamese food, I guess the boom was maybe over the recent 10 years, right? You would have not heard people talking about ube and adobo and lumpia, um, if not for 5 years ago. So there's a recent shift also in people trying different foods and different cultures, or traveling at a more extended level. So that's something that I think has also changed. But um, having access to those products from home was not something that was common. You had to go to an Asian grocery, which meant you had to drive an hour or 2 hours or 3 hours to be able to get those products. And you wanted those things to be accessible. Otherwise, there's no way for you to scale in that market. And the way that you can go, become accessible, is you become present in local marketplaces of those countries, right? So these are your Amazons, or these are your Etsy's, these are your eBays, right? And in order to do that, again, you had to comply, you had to change the mindset. And then the last thing we wanted to really address at that point was, why is it so expensive and difficult to send anything from Southeast Asia to anywhere in the world, right? Why does it have to be so expensive? Why does it have to be, why do you have to do all of these things, right? So we wanted to simplify that, and we felt that by addressing the logistics aspect, we could definitely make a difference in the lives of these small businesses from Southeast Asia.
Yeah, that's very true because obviously it's going to start small for usual, small businesses, and they won't be able to grow as much as they can right away without at least testing the market. So you being a platform for different, small businesses coming together and pushing them right in the marketplaces as you mentioned, and having the demand also kind of you're kind of creating the demand, right? As you mentioned, for Philippine products, I think there are different trends now, and I agree with you. More people are getting more curious and more willing to try different flavors or different products, different sources of where they get their items. So maybe on that note, right? Like, what do you think? Have you seen, right? Are unique strengths that Philippine-made products and Philippine businesses, your clients perhaps, what's the edge that you're seeing that they can compete in the global market?
So I think for Philippine products, I think particular to Philippine products, Filipinos know how to market. So they're really good with selling stuff. I think it's a cultural thing where when you were a kid, you were asked to sing and dance during Christmas parties, and you had no choice. So they're really, really good at it. So they can take something so simple and describe it in a really good way, or package it in a really nice
Very
way,
creative.
and they're able to say, yeah. So they're able um to create something out of technically nothing. So I think that's a unique strength. Um, flavors are very unique to the Philippines. They obviously, like now ube is popular, but it was popularized because of a Philippine culture. Ube is available across Southeast Asia. There is ube in Indonesia as well. But I think it was the Filipino food and the Filipino culture that popularized it, because Indonesians don't use uh because Indonesians don't use ube for their desserts, not like the Philippines, right? So it's something that is unique to us. And I think the other thing that is super unique to Philippine products is the fact that they have the largest diaspora in Southeast Asia, right? Unlike
Absolutely.
the Indonesians or the Vietnamese, where a lot of them will come back after they've made it, um, the Filipinos would like to stay in that country that they move
Second and
into.
third generations already
Yes,
of
and they now
families.
have second and third generations that want to really go back to their roots. So they have a strong market.
That's true. And I guess also with social media, and like you said, you finding things online, and if we're good at marketing and letting the world know that these are the things that come from the Philippines, we're able to kind of bridge that, and hopefully, right, like it becomes more accessible. You were saying earlier, right, the one of the challenges or the gaps you wanted to fill is the efficiency and the accessibility, right? Because you also don't want to have Philippine products being very expensive when it gets to the shelves of other markets. But that's great. I mean, I think maybe on that note also, right? Not necessarily just Philippine products, right? I think it's really small businesses aspiring to go global, right? Becoming a global brand, becoming, if you can be in shelves everywhere, right? Like, what do you think are the significant challenges that, small businesses need to kind of, level up, right? Like, what do they need to kind of key steps? Of course, you mentioned already the mindset, right? But like, what are the key steps for them to really unlock their potential to be a global brand?
So one is that they have to comply with the regulations abroad. There are no shortcuts, especially if these markets are like first world, right? Like there are no shortcuts. It's either you comply or you don't, and if you don't comply, your products go back. So that's a lot of the work. I think the second part is to really um, know where your market is, right? So um, it's I mean, with e-commerce now being so prevalent in the lives of everyone, uh, if you're able to do it well, you could succeed, and there are ways to do it well. We've worked with small businesses where they just focus on a particular niche, like a particular diaspora, a particular sector of that diaspora, and they're very good, meaning they're able to ship out a lot of stuff. So that I feel that's very impressive given very little budget. There are people that say they just want to go Asian groceries, right? But there is a strategy to grow in Asian groceries, right? Like, you people have to be eating your products all the time, right? So those are like things that so I think understanding and knowing your market is also critical. But also well, I guess the other thing is to really make sure that you are available. People think that just because there is a regular buyer, somebody that will buy from them on a regular basis, like every month or every other month or every year, that they're good. They've already exported, they've already gone global. But I don't think that's necessarily the case. If you're not available in places where your customers look, find, and verify your products, then uh, you're just waiting for a demise eventually, right? Because especially now that social media is global, and especially now that marketplaces are global, right? Like you see Amazon just shipping directly to the Philippines, right?
Yeah.
There is no excuse to not really adapt
available.
a global strategy.
Correct. Yeah, no, I think it's already like the global mindset has to already be, at the very start, a part of your plan or part of, the horizon you see for your business. And maybe I think on in your experience, right? Because you mentioned that you're also in different markets already in Southeast Asia. Can you share a little bit about that too? Like, how do you see, individually, right, the other markets in Southeast Asia, but also as a block, right? Like, you think that the Southeast Asia products can actually be a strong competitor across all the different consumer goods out there. What is your vision there in the market?
So generally, I believe like Southeast Asia, we're not like Indian or Chinese products where people are aware about it because of the population, right? So Southeast Asian products, obviously, for example, the Philippines has a diaspora, so they already have like an instant market. But Southeast Asian products are good, like on its own. Like you will never find Vietnamese coffee anywhere else except Vietnam. Like there's a certain experience where you will not find sambal anywhere else except in Malaysia or Indonesia, right? And so, but even the sambal of Malaysia is different from the sambal of Indonesia. So there's a particular experience that goes behind Southeast Asian products, right? There's a particular. It's not just that because everyone can say, oh, these are handmade by a particular community, right? There's a certain experience that goes behind Southeast Asian products that I feel is very unique to Southeast Asia. And, especially if you understand, you know, the story that is behind it, then it makes it more relevant and more valuable. But for example, I think where I see Southeast Asia in general, like especially for micro, small, and medium enterprises, you would think Vietnam is like advanced because obviously Vietnam is an export first market, right? But you would, but there are a lot of small businesses in Vietnam that don't know how to export yet, or they're exporting to a trader. You go to a Bentan market and they export through traders, or they export through foreigners, meaning a foreigner will buy their product and then bring it back home.
And it's a
Right.
different brand, right? They probably build their own brand abroad and then just have it's sourced in Vietnam, sourced in the Philippines, etc.
Exactly. So I feel like MSME exports for Southeast Asia is still untapped, and it's still, there's so much to do and to develop. It's quite interesting, because it's like it's not just the ability to speak English, right? That is the blocker. It's not. It's understanding that it's not an overnight thing. It's understanding that there are processes, and it's something that I particularly like to solve. It's something that I'm passionate to talk about with our customers, right? And understand where else can we help them build so that they could achieve their global dreams, right? So I feel like, it's people are it's still, we've been doing this for almost 9 years now, and it's something that I feel would finally happen, or would finally be in, if not this year, at least in the next 3 years.
Yeah, I think it's really that whole mindset shift that you mentioned, and we're already seeing, right? Like you were in the earlier years, planting the seeds, and I think the fruits, or these seeds are bearing fruit already. That I can see that where people are looking, right, for these products in other markets. So I mean, what's also interesting that I find in your, I would say, position, right, or in the kind of business you're in, is like you are an entrepreneur, but your customers are actually entrepreneurs themselves as well, right? Because like you said, you're like hand-holding them through their experience as exporters or would-be exporters. So I'm sure there's so many, I guess, shared stories, shared challenges and experiences that you have with fellow SMEs. And maybe we could dive into that as well, if that's okay, Mel, right? So maybe with that, right? Like, in your work, I know you were saying earlier that, export became that, I would say, industry where you said you could really create an impact, right? Is there an experience for you maybe with a customer that you can tell us that really signifies that, right? That impact that you think, or you do believe, the 1Export has become part of their journey. Maybe you can share a little bit of the story there.
So for a lot of small businesses we work with, a lot of them, it's their first time to export, and then they go to us, and we try and make that experience as easy and as seamless as possible. With we've had people who used to, you know, just maybe see us in a talk and then like reach out to us, and we've helped them process their licenses, and we've brought their products to another country for the first time, to the US for the first time. We've seen that they've been able to hire more people. We've seen that they were able to, say, improve their packaging. We've seen that they've been able to buy new equipment and scale their business. And it's something that you get because you're able to earn more, right? You're able to earn more than your local community, but you're also able to you're able to earn in dollars, which, if you're lucky, if the exchange rates are high, then you're able to at least make a bigger profit. And I think that's the beauty of exports in general, because it also changes your mindset. Once you finally go export or go global, which is our tagline for the longest time, once you go global, actually, like, it changes you. It's like, oh, well, I'm not just a Philippine company, or I'm not just a Vietnamese or an Indonesian company. I'm I could finally be a global company because I export, and that also changes an entrepreneur.
Yeah, that's true. And if I may add to that, right? How has that changed for you as well? Because you're now in different markets. You definitely, of course, from the very beginning, you work with countries, of course, where your customers would like to bring their products to. But I'm sure your journey yourself has kind of changed, and also maybe with improvements, but also challenges along the way. How has it become, like, what's maybe, I think I wanted to find out, like, key lessons that you have gained or have learned, right, from shifting as just a local business, right, or dealing with, let's say, Philippine companies, into becoming really like a global platform or a regional player in this space, right? Like, any difference or any significant lessons for you, right? As a founder, as an entrepreneur that's not just in the Philippines.
Yeah, part of why we wanted to expand was because, well, if I'm helping my small businesses expand, I would like that for myself too, right? Like, I would like that for the company
Absolutely.
too, right? Because it's like, why stop, or why can't I practice
Limit
what I
yourself
preach?
here. Correct.
Right, exactly. So I think that's kind of where we started. And I mean, for me, um obviously the learnings per market are different, right? I mean, back when I was just set up in the Philippines, back when we were just setting up in the Philippines, it was just Philippines this time. But now it's like you understand different cultures, you understand how to localize certain services that you offer. You understand how to market, right? Like, so for example, in Indonesia, in the Philippines, we're so used to following up. Like, if your client does not reach out to you, you follow up, right? That's normal. But in
Yes.
Indonesia, I don't think it's a practice. Basically, like, if you piss off your client, he may never
All that.
call back, but also never avail of your services ever, right? So those are like local nuances we kind of understood along the way, but that was really a function of the fact that we we grew, and so we also grew with the way we operated, and we became humbled by that. Which is kind of why we're here now.
Well, I mean, big congratulations, right? You are a global brand, right? Like, as you said, your tagline is, you're helping businesses go global, and you yourself have gone global. And that's definitely, great milestones, even for, a startup, or for an entrepreneur in the Philippines. But also, you're quite unique yourself as a female founder in this space, right? So, Mel, you're like a woman in tech, right? And a woman in exports, right? These industries both, I'd say traditionally, male dominated as well. Were there any challenges, like unique experiences you've had to face, and how did you navigate through them, right? Like especially with I guess not that many peers, right? Or not that many people perhaps that's in your line of business as a woman.
So obviously, as a woman, there are challenges. Like a lot of people, you know, discount, discount me sometimes. I've had experiences where, particularly some investors I've spoken to, if I talk to them, they will talk to the male person in the room, right? Or, like I've been asked if I was going to get married or if I when I was gonna have kids. But I know you would not normally ask a male founder, but you get asked those questions. But I guess for me, instead of looking at them as a negative, I was challenged to be much better so that those questions won't even be asked, right? Because it's like normally people ask those questions if they have questions about your ability, but if you're really good or you're really good at what you're doing, then I don't think you'd ever be asked those questions. So I think for us, it's like, how can we do good and deliver good and deliver things the best
Results.
possible way we can?
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's true. I mean, of course, you show your competence, your brilliance to whether an investor or to a customer or to, the clients that you work with abroad. Yeah, definitely, that's something that you'd want to, be a level playing field, regardless of gender. But I think it's also something that we'd like to encourage, right? We also have a lot of entrepreneurs that want to grow, that really want to, break barriers, and we do want, I guess, like you said, that confidence and that drive to keep going, and regardless of some of these hiccups, I would say, or barriers, they're able to push forward. But maybe perhaps also on that note, right? Like MSMEs, I think it's been put there that in the Philippines, at least, more than 50% of SMEs. I'm not quite sure about exporters, right? But it said that, they're actually led by women too, right? Like many of the SME owners are women-led businesses, right? In the Philippines. So what do you think actually, right? Like gender diversity, does it play a role? How can it play a role in fostering innovation and, products and consumer goods, right? It's also important to have women there. So any thoughts on that, and, words of encouragement, especially for other, women entrepreneurs out there?
So most SMEs are women in the Philippines, at least in the Philippines, most SMEs are women and women led. And what's nice about SMEs, especially if they're women led, is they're very resilient. They're very conservative, meaning they're like always second guessing if what they're doing is correct, right? And will not make a decision unless they are 100% sure. But they're also very resilient. Like if something happens, they will find a way to fix it or to get it done or to make sure everything is okay until the very end. And I think that's very telling, or the striking difference between a man or a woman. What I appreciate about men is that if they know it's not working, they can end easily. But at least the woman will try, right? Like we'll try, we'll die trying at least, right? So it's something that I feel is unique to women-led SMEs, and I think it's a strength because you'll need that when you export, because you will not always get it right the first time. You will not get
Customers,
all the customers you want, right?
There'd be more
it's not going to be exactly. You're not going to be an overnight millionaire with exporting. It's a long-term thing where you have to build your customers. You have to build, you have to understand your price points. You have to um, optimize your supply chain, and I think if you have that kind of attitude, then you can definitely succeed in the long run.
That's wonderful. Thanks, Mel. I mean, I think that's a really good note for, maybe our listeners that are founders or aspiring entrepreneurs or actually also SMEs. That's why I said earlier, it's great because your, I would say, insight or experience is very unique as a founder of, let's say, a tech or a solutions, platform for 1Export and Zende's. But, you work closely, right, with, your brick and mortar producers and SMEs, and those types of entrepreneurs that also need that, like you said, resilience and drive to keep going and to keep growing. So maybe as we wrap up this conversation, I have maybe a last question for you, and perhaps I guess it's a more personal question. In your journey or your experience, I'm sure you've met a lot of really interesting people, brilliant mentors, or people that you look up to. Any advice or two that you've been given that has been significantly helpful, right, for you, whether it's for you personally in life in general, or you as a business entrepreneur, that you can share with our listeners?
So I think for me, one of the things that was very helpful, especially if you run a business and so many things are happening every day, it's to focus on things you can control, right? Because a lot of times we often get so overwhelmed by the work that we often forget that there are things that you can control right here, right now. And there are things that you can do right here, right now to be able to make that less of a problem in the long run, right? So I think it's as much as I can, especially in days that seem overwhelming, it's really something that I do. The other thing is, for me, is to do things with great joy, right? For me, it's like, right now I've taken kind of this stance where if it doesn't make me happy or if it doesn't bring me joy, Marie Kondo, if it doesn't spark joy, then why do it, right? And for me, life is short, and you'd like as much as possible to bring joy to others and also have joy in your life. And for you to do that, you have to really spend a significant part of your day where you are happy about the things that you are doing. And for me, it's that. However difficult and challenging and long term the road will be for exporting, it's something that I know I will do without getting paid, without clocking in my hours, right? And it's because when somebody exports for the first time, at least for me, I find so much joy in that. It's like, oh, finally, you've been able to do that. Oh, finally, you've been able to sell more. And yeah, and I think especially if you're an entrepreneur, things that bring you joy will be very important because the road ahead is never easy, right? It's filled with challenges, it's filled with problems, it's filled with sleepless nights, and if you are not happy or passionate about things that you're currently doing, then I don't think that it's something that you should pursue, right? Especially or be in business with, because at the end of the day, businesses that stick are businesses that are mission driven, but also that are extremely rooted because the founder fought for it. The founder believed in it. The founder fought for the mission because the founder found joy in that mission.
Wow. Thank you for that, Mel. It's very inspiring. And like you said, we try to find joy in the work that we do. We spend most of our lives actually at work or doing work, right? So might as well be happy. And of course, I love how you, really kept it real, that it's never like a joyful, experience every single day or every single minute of it. But, overall, if it is really where your heart is, any challenge, all the things and troubles that might come your way is something that you can definitely overcome. And something that you could be proud of. And I see you smiling. I mean, I hope our listeners hear you smile as you said that. I saw that you're always very excited and rooting for your customers, right? And see their success. And we hope the same for you. I hope the same for you. And really excited also. I think somehow it's like you are an ambassador of the Philippines, right? Of SMEs in the country, so that we can really be part of the global, the global market in actually bringing, right, the Philippine brand up there. So thank you again, Mel. There's so much we've learned from you in this, couple of minutes. Thank you for, joining us and sharing your stories. We look forward to all the updates that you may have, right? We'll stay tuned to what Zenbees is up to, not just in the Philippines, but also across Southeast Asia. And of course, for our listeners, perhaps, you want to reach out to them. You're interested to go global. You know that Mel and her team will definitely be helping you and root for you. So again, thank you so much, Mel. Thank you for joining us. And for those who are listening, thank you for tuning in to this episode of Questions with Mel Nava of 1Export. For more episodes like this, be sure to hit the follow button on whichever platform you're listening from. Again, I am your host, April Ong Vano. Till next time.